Good morning. It's Friday, September 26th, 2025. I'm meteorologist Andrew Pritchard, joined by my basement studio cricket. If you can hear that going on in the background here, taking a look at what we got going on here across the Canadian Prairie. It's been dry over the last 7 days, and it's going to be dry for the next 7 days in most areas as well. We've got temperatures that are going to be staying mild overall as we continue to see persistent high pressure and weaker jet stream flow across North America. Talk about that here over the next several minutes. A bit of a shorter video update here today. Got a schedule conflict, but we've also got just quiet weather overhead over the next 7 to 14 days. So no worries, or no need, I should say, about, no need to overcomplicate things. But looking at the last 7 days, just about everybody's been on the dry side. Peace River, Grand Prairie, you've seen a little bit of rain over the last 7 days, and then Winnipeg, you saw over an inch of rain over the last 7 days. But Alberta, Saskatchewan, western portions of Manitoba, a whole lot of dry real estate. As we take a look at the satellite picture here, infrared, we've got a couple of big lows curling up off to the north, and this is really indicative of the pattern. We've got tropical systems here as the Atlantic starts to come to life, but as jet stream flow remains kind of split, weaker, and further to the north, the main branch of the polar jet here, lifting up to the north as it gets towards North America. And we get these lows that just kind of curl up here across the Hudson Bay, bring a little frontal boundary, a little frontal passage. And so these are our rain opportunities in a pattern like this. It's these brief frontal passages that you look at the radar here early on Friday morning and you see that little band of precipitation. This is something that takes an hour or two to pass overhead, delivers a light coating of moisture out there, but is not going to provide a couple days worth of rain opportunities. And so we'll take a look at what we've got over the next 10 days, and it's more of the same. We've got this front that makes its way through during the day today, going to bring a quick shot of some clouds and maybe some very light rain as it makes its way from west to east across the Prairie provinces through the day today. This would be Friday night. Now getting into Saturday morning. This is now getting into Sunday. Take it on into Monday. This is the NAM model. So a quiet weekend across much of the Prairie, except for that little frontal passage on Friday. That being today, and then we can take a look at the European model. This will take us a little bit longer range. Here's your Friday front that sneaks through. Take it through a quiet weekend. This is now getting into early next week, so we're into Monday the 29th. We'll be talking about a couple of tropical systems here in the Atlantic, one of which might make landfall here in the southeastern United States. But from the Prairie all the way through the northern plains and the American Corn Belt here, high pressure, no jet stream flow is going to keep the pattern pretty quiet. So we'll get into September 30th. This is now Tuesday. Getting into Wednesday, we've got a very weak area of low pressure that could bring some very isolated rain showers to the Prairie. This is getting into Wednesday and Thursday now, the first couple of days of October. This is Friday, October 3rd. Getting into October 4th now. This is next weekend, so we're now 8 days into the future, 9 days now as we get into September. Sunday, October 5th is what we're looking at here. And now the model's trying to attempt to bring in a bigger area of low pressure, passing potentially south of the Prairie and bringing some precipitation. Right now, it kind of delivers the heavy swath of precipitation. You even see some colder air and some freezing precipitation on the back side of this, but this is getting way out there into the range where I'm not comfortable getting into the specifics. So let's just call it a dry next 10 days before we get into October 6th, 7th, and 8th, and maybe start talking about a more well-defined storm system moving through portions of the Prairie provinces. So over the next 10 days, this is the forecast precipitation, and what you see developing there across western Alberta is the early stages of that potential storm system here over the back half of next weekend into early portions of week 2. So over the next 10 days, we're not talking about much in the way of precipitation at all across the Prairie provinces, just very isolated, widely scattered, light opportunities for rainfall. And the reason for that is this persistent area of high pressure that continues to kind of wobble across portions of Canada back toward the Pacific Northwest. And as it does so, jet stream flow remains, again, deflected north and weak. So this is what the precipitation anomaly forecast looks like from the European ensemble. And this is covering the next 2 weeks. You see a lot of brown shading here from the Prairie down through almost the entirety of the lower 48 here of the United States. The only green shading you see there is thanks to potential tropical impacts across the southeastern United States, and then where we have some stronger flow coming from the Pacific into British Columbia. A lot of that being deposited across the coastal areas there, high elevations of British Columbia, and then moisture being wrung out. And the model's kind of flirting with the idea that maybe Grand Prairie, Edmonton, areas near Highway 16, maybe a higher chance of seeing some moisture here as we get into week 2. But very big questions as we get past, and into that time frame here, 2 weeks out into the future, and what's been a pretty tough pattern to kind of pick out with any sort of confidence beyond days 7 to 10. Temperatures, as we just kind of loop these from the European ensemble, again, not looking at any big intrusions of cold air, with high confidence over the next 7 to 10 days, if anything. Temperatures likely staying on the mild side with those afternoon high temperatures anywhere from the upper teens to around 20 degrees, the lower 20s, with overnight lows in the middle single digits for the most part over the next 7 days in most locations. We take a look at the jet stream here as we get all the way out to, again, this is around October 7th and 8th, just looking at the jet stream ensemble mean forecast. And what I see is strong jet stream flow coming across Eastern Asia and then being deflected north with a very weak, kind of variable jet stream as we get toward the North Pacific, certainly over toward the Gulf of Alaska. And then the flow that is making its way into North America remains split, weakened, and deflected north. So if we want to look at big, organized, moisture-filled storm systems that are bringing, disruptive weather, big swaths of precipitation, temperature disruptions here across North America, from the Prairie down into the Corn Belt, we're going to need to see the Pacific jet stream change. And whether that's going to be thanks to, La Nina, the MJO, a recurving tropical system here, a lot of question marks as we get out toward the middle part of October. But right now, we're lacking the ingredients for big disruptive storm systems across the Prairie. And so you end up with a precipitation forecast that looks like this. Again, a lot of dryness from the Gulf all the way up to the Prairie. I mean, this is just delivering some moisture to the western U.S., portions of British Columbia, and maybe northern portions of Canada. Then I mentioned that tropical impact potentially across the southeastern U.S., but there's a lot of dry real estate here across North America because this is a dry pattern here as you look at the jet stream all the way back across the Pacific Ocean. Side by side here, this is the next 10 days on the left, and then we've got days 10 to 15 on the right. You see the precipitation here from that potential storm system as we get towards October 8th through the 10th is being depicted there near and north of Highway 16. So big question marks around that map on the right, higher confidence in the map on the left, which depicts dry, relatively quiet conditions across the Prairie, mild for the most part as we look at that temperature loop here. I'll just take it out over the next 2 weeks. You see a lot of mild air. You see at times maybe a little front sweeping through, bringing some briefly cooler air to areas across the west, but this is way out here. This is now October 6th. This is when we're talking about that potential storm system kind of riding that gradient right there. I mentioned that colder air wrapping around, potential for some freezing precipitation if this verified verbatim all the way out there 2 weeks from now, essentially. So the pattern right now across the Prairie, pretty dry for just about everyone, pretty mild for just about everyone, and that continues to be the theme until further notice. We'll kind of reassess things again a week from today. That will be Friday, getting into the first week of October.